right, all. We're going to jump back in with our second presentation, and everyone can continue to have lunch while we listen. All right. So, as Devyani mentioned in her presentation, to ensure eligible New Yorkers know about, I'll wait for the chips opening. Yes. To ensure eligible New Yorkers know about, claim, and receive the governor's expanded child tax credit, New York needs effective promotion and outreach with clear messaging that uses language that is simple, accessible, and supportive, focused on opportunity to receive money, less so about compliance, coupled with concerted and creative efforts to reduce administrative burden, a topic we talked extensively about, and of course the challenges we have discussed here, these challenges, identifying and reaching low-income eligible households, which have been raised and reiterated by Kristen and Tax and folks in this room, and also our previous presentation, are not unique to New York. They are a common challenge for departments of revenue across the U.S. in identifying those eligible households that don't file and encouraging them to do that thing which they've not done or are wary of doing for various reasons. So, as we've noted, New York is one of 14 states with state-level CTCs, 14 and counting, I should say. Other states with CTCs are leading the way in innovating in the area of promotion and outreach in an effort to try and improve take-up rates and reach those who need the credit most. So the case study that we'll consider today is Minnesota, where we have discussed the CTC is among the highest in the country at $1750 per child. It was recently number one in the country, but I believe, sorry, Minnesota, I think you guys were surpassed by Colorado. But since establishing their CTC in 2023, Minnesota has been laser focused on inclusivity and reaching people so that the credit has the desired effect. They've approached this through an all-of-the-above strategy that is trying all sorts of interventions, including government-driven and not-for-profit supported, many of which will sound familiar after our last presentation. So our goal now is sort of what can we learn from Minnesota's actions and successes. To talk more about this topic, we'll hear from Adel Shukuzadeh, the Public Engagement Director for Minnesota's Department of Revenue. Adel will summarize the range of efforts undertaken by Minnesota to increase take-up and reach those families most in need. And he'll provide an overview of Minnesota's comprehensive CTC outreach strategies. So this will include discussion of the kinds of language that's most effective, echoing Devyani's survey findings, language that should be supportive, simple, and clear. This will include outlining the easy-to-use tools that Minnesota developed to help families file with minimal information, locate help if needed, and make informed decisions for themselves and their families. We thought it was not only important to hear about the sort of more academic and research perspective on this topic, but also about the practical perspective from a state government that has taken tangible actions and is achieving results. And then he will spend a few minutes taking questions you may have about those concepts and actions, including about lessons learned and some tips for New York to consider as we try to follow in some of their footsteps here. So everyone please welcome Adel Shukuzadeh. Thank you, Adel. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen so you can share yours.
Good day, everyone. Thank you so much. First, just want to start by thanking Kat and Isaac for your support in preparing for this, and also want to send an appreciation to the council for the invitation. Let me share my screen here real quick and get a hopeful thumbs up that you can see the presentation. Very good. Alrighty. My name is Adel Shukuzadeh. I've been at the Minnesota Department of Revenue as the Public Engagement Director for a little over 3 years now. As Isaac mentioned, we are about to enter year 3 of our child tax credit being available to families. For today's presentation, I'm going to go over the past 2 years, efforts we've taken, things we've learned, and maybe even give a little preview as to some activities we'll be doing going into year 3. Our mission here at the Department of Revenue is working together to fund the future for all of Minnesota. And our vision is that everyone reports, pays, and receives the right amount, no more, no less. So I'll start with a brief overview of our credit, share some shared principles that we've developed with advocates around the child tax credit. And then we'll walk through a taxpayer journey and how our actions fit into the typical experience for our taxpayer, and where we partnered with other agencies and community partners to connect with families. The purpose of this child tax credit, why we're doing all this work, is really to reduce childhood poverty. That is one of the goals of the child tax credit. And so keep that in mind as we go through this presentation. So we have the child tax credit. Just real quick over the structure of this, helpful for you all to have this context, is that this is a refundable credit, meaning folks can receive a refund even if they don't owe a tax, up to $1,750 per qualifying child, age 17 or younger, no limit on the number of children. And this is a credit that will gradually phase out. So if you are an income at $36,880 and you're filing jointly, you'd receive the full amount. A dollar above that number, it starts going down periodically until you reach a certain threshold. For any other filer, that amount would be $31,090. And this credit is eligible for folks with individual tax identification numbers. Everything on the left carried over to the right for the advance payments of the child tax credit. So this is something that we launched this year. Folks need to opt in. You may recall during the pandemic that the federal government had advance payments. That was an opt-out. This is an opt-in. One big reason for that is that the United States Department of Agriculture determined that these advance payments would be counted as income against SNAP benefits. And for that reason, we wanted to make sure folks had that information and make a good decision as to whether they wanted to participate in advance payments or not. The advance payment, the way that it's set up, is that folks who believe that they would be eligible for the child tax credit next year would receive 50% of next year's credit in 3 payments throughout the calendar year, and then they would do their taxes the following year to receive the remainder of the credit. There might be instances where folks may need to pay back in case there's a change in family dynamic, but generally that is how the program is structured from an ideal scenario. We worked a lot with community advocates around the child tax credit and the advance payments, and we landed on these 4 shared principles and values, which have really guided our decision-making at the Department of Revenue around how to promote the child tax credit and think about implementing the credit as well. So first and foremost, we want to trust families as the decision makers. Whether family dynamics are never static, and so people can make a decision depending on how their family is structured as to who would claim a child for the child tax credit. Maybe there's a scenario where you have 2 families that are similarly situated. They have the same number of kiddos that they claim. They both receive the same amount of money in SNAP. They're thinking about the advance payments. They would have the same decrease in SNAP benefits because of their advance payments. So you're looking at this on an Excel spreadsheet and you think that they're both going to make the same decision with all that information. But one might make a value judgment that they don't want to see any reduction in their SNAP benefits at all, that those SNAP benefits are important to them and they are not going to opt into the advance payments. Whereas someone else may see the advance payments as providing them more flexibility and choose to opt into that. Those are both great decisions for those families, as long as it's coming from an informed place. And that goes into our next value. We want everything that we are doing here at the agency to be simple, clear, and accessible to folks. This is a new program. For some folks, it's a new behavior that's being required of them to file taxes. We'll talk a little bit about that as we go along, but we want to make sure that every bit of information that we have and every bit of information we're asking partners to share is simple, clear, and accessible. We also wanted to make sure that the program is reliable, that it's something that folks can know is going to be available year in and year out. And especially when it comes to advance payments as well. When we say that there's going to be a direct deposit or check delivered to someone on a particular date, that it is in people's mailboxes or in their bank accounts by that date as well. And of course, this is all to strengthen the public trust. Our commissioner talks a lot about the tax code being a glimpse into democracy. And we want to make sure that when we as an agency are doing our due diligence in terms of qualifications and all the things that go into the tax code, that it is folks that qualify for the child tax credit that are receiving it, because that's only going to continue to make sure that we have a reliable program going forward. It's going to make sure that it's simple, clear, and accessible, and it's going to be something that sets families up for success in the future. So now I'll transition to talking a little bit about the taxpayer journey. Now, the taxpayer journey is much more complex than these three buckets, but this is just a simple way of trying to think about how we at Revenue have approached this work. So first, we think about the taxpayer journey starting with awareness. We want to make sure that families and filers have the information that they need about credits that they could take advantage of. Once they have that information, now they have to make a decision point. How are they going to file the return? Where are they going to go file a return? If they're thinking about the advance payments, what is the information they need to know there? So how do we get them the best tools and information to make the best decision for themselves? And then, of course, there's the actual action of filing. And we want to make sure filers have the confidence, the know-how, and the funds for those that go down that route to file their taxes. So let's start with our efforts around the awareness aspect of the taxpayer journey. One of the things that we've developed are promotional materials for partners. You know, we at Revenue see our role in government as being a source of truth, and we see the role of partners being the trusted messenger. So we want to make sure that when we're asking community organizations or other levels of government to share information on behalf of the agency, that those partners know they're sharing accurate information. So we developed a whole suite of social media posts, newsletter language, flyers, videos to make it easy for partners to plug and play. At the end of this presentation, there'll be a link to those materials, as well as a lot of other things that I'll be discussing during this presentation. We also have outreach grants that are available. So lawmakers passed legislation establishing a new grant for outreach activities. We have around 30 partner organizations across the state, and this is in addition to grant funding we provide for free tax preparation services. The third bullet point there are free tax preparation site visits. So pictured here is Governor Tim Walz, Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan, and Department of Revenue Commissioner, Minnesota Department of Revenue Commissioner Paul Marquardt. We visited free tax sites across Minnesota to help highlight the child tax credit and the role that free tax preparation sites play in being able to connect people to the tax code and to these credits and other credits. With that came earned media, right? So whenever the governor, lieutenant governor, the commissioner are out in community, it's going to draw media attention. But in addition to that, we did things government agencies usually do through press releases, radio and TV interviews to help spread the word. And then we used our paid media platforms, mainly on social media through Facebook, to help elevate messaging there as well. On the screen now is an example of one of the promotional materials that we have available for partners. So we have suggested language here for anyone that wanted to promote the advance payment options. It reads, you can choose to receive part of your child tax credit for the next year in 3 advance payments before you file your next income tax return. For details, visit, there's a URL to our webpage with more information. And then there's a graphic to accompany that because social media posts rely on graphics to work with the algorithm. So we developed an approved logo there, hashtag, and it has our logo, as well as the ability for partners to add their own logo if they'd like. We also have been thinking a lot about strategic outreach. So what I shared before was kind of broad general awareness messaging opportunities, but how do we make sure that we're thinking about particular populations and the messages that they need to hear? So one of the things that we are going to be exploring this year, going into next year, is centering life events and circumstances. So we're thinking about, when is someone having a key moment in their life or interacting with another government agency that is making them ready to receive a message about the child tax credit because they're thinking about their family. So we're thinking about student parents. We're thinking about people going on paid leave to bond with their family. Maybe someone's now receiving unemployment benefits, and that is going to make them eligible income-wise for the child tax credit in a way that they hadn't thought they were before. Adoption and fostering events, tribal members. We're looking at these kind of lived experiences or life events as ways of putting messages out in front of folks around the child tax credit. We're also looking at geography, so comparing historical or anticipated uptake rates, looking at county or zip code level data to make a best guess. Do we think that we're on track with what we have seen historically in this region? And if not, what are some interventions we can put in place? Some of those involved looking at state tax credits and other benefits. So are there other tax credits that overlap with the child tax credit in terms of eligibility, and how can we have a good unified message there in that sense? And there are a whole host of other state benefits. And how do we think about other agencies that are a trusted source on those benefits to help share a message? Can we lean into agencies that are the point of contact for food shelves or childcare centers or schools across the state and ask them to help share at a minimum our promotional materials, putting banner images across their benefits pages to make sure that there's a connection there, things along those lines. And we've really leaned into this approach where we didn't have to rely on a need to share data. I think for anyone in the room that works in government, we tend to say, well, we need an interagency agreement where we are writing a memo on the data that we're going to share with one another to do some specific thing. And we looked at this effort and said, we don't need access to another agency's newsletter to send this message. Their comms directors can do that. Their social media folks can go and share the message as they see helpful. And so let's do that as quickly as possible and make it easier on everyone involved. Next, let's talk a little bit about the decision point of the taxpayer journey. And so there are two main buckets here. One is just general filing resources. So we have, and again, there will be links to this at the end of the presentation, a searchable map for folks to type in their zip code, identify language needs, whatever the case may be, to get connected to a free tax preparation site within Minnesota. We also have a web page dedicated to electronic filing options, whether they are free or paid, tips and tricks on how to go about identifying a paid tax preparer if that is what you would like to do, as well as a whole host of instructions on our website on questions to ask and determining eligibility for the child tax credit. And then, of course, we have the advance payments, which is especially with that kind of USDA determination on SNAP benefits, a really important thing that we wanted to highlight. So we sent emails to tax preparers who had some strong feelings around the federal rollout of those advance payments. So we want to highlight how our program is different and things that we were doing to set tax preparers and families up for success for anyone that took advance payments to reconcile the following year. We sent a whole host of letters to folks that opted in to let them know that they have opted in, providing text messaging options for folks that wanted to get updates as to when they could anticipate money being sent into their bank accounts or being mailed to them. And then we're planning to send a summary at the end of the year to make it as easy as possible for those families that are in advance payments to reconcile the following year. We also have a whole host of common repayment examples because we wanted to make sure that folks knew if they anticipated receiving the child tax credit the following year, and then for whatever reason they weren't eligible. We wanted to provide those examples on the front end as to common scenarios where someone would have to repay. And then the Department of Children, Youth, and Families, which oversees kind of the state administration of SNAP benefits and programs, created a really helpful estimator tool. It is down right now, but I did the video kind of explainer as to how the tool works, and I'm going to go through a few screenshots of the tool here. But we really wanted to make sure that folks receiving SNAP benefits could fill in this information. It's a little blurry and hard to see, so I apologize for that, but please watch the video. It goes into a lot of great detail as to what is the information you need to pull from your latest tax return, what is information you should be putting in terms of your SNAP benefits. And on this slide right here on the right side, let me see if I can't do a laser pointer here, identifying the amount that you'd receive estimated in advance payments and what the reduction could look for you for your SNAP benefits, total amount lost, and then having that information available so that way when you go to do your taxes, whether it's a prompt from TurboTax or you're with a free tax preparation site provider, you're feeling a little bit more informed and ready to make that decision as to whether you want to participate in advance payments or not. The last part of the taxpayer journey that I will highlight is the filing aspect of things. And we wanted to make sure, and what you see here on the slide is a bar graph highlighting our taxpayer assistance grant that we provide. So the gray bar are all the requests that we're receiving from organizations interested in the grant funding. In the blue, you'll see the amount that we have available. And so just very quickly, there's more demand than supply. So our agency has thought a lot about what are the things that we can do programmatically in addition to sending out grants to support these free tax prep sites. One of the things that we are doing, and we just launched this now, is around volunteerism support. Our agency and our commissioner has challenged other commissioners at other agencies to recruit more volunteers than the Department of Revenue. So collectively, can the rest of the state generate more and recruit more volunteers than us? Our goal is to recruit 100 volunteers for this effort. If we were able to get 100 volunteers, that could be an additional 5,000 families that would be supported at free tax preparation services. And then we're doing a whole host of training and community practices for free tax prep sites, convening spaces for them to feel connected to one another so they can share best practices, collaborate, and really lean into each other's expertise in this space as well. So what have we achieved so far? Our progress thus far. So this was as of September 29th, 2025, when I pulled these numbers. So in tax year 2023, about 84% of our estimated eligible population claimed the child tax credit. That was about 218,000 filers, average of 2 kids per family. And so you add that together, the average credit going towards a family was about $2,486. For tax year 2024, from when I pulled these numbers, 86% of estimated eligible population claimed the child tax credit. And we're still not done with the year. That's to about 22,536 filers, average credit per family, $2,000, $2,568. I will say we are now at 87%. Wanted to share that with you. We just to highlight, like, how did we get to those numbers and what went behind us calculating the eligible population. Our tax researchers know a lot more than what I'm about to share right now, but what I will provide as an insight are 2 things that might be helpful to you all in helping determine this number. One is we have kind of an income tax model where we ran a simulation to estimate how many existing filers would be eligible for the proposed credit. Then we have our tax incidence database, which combines data from tax data, human services programs, employment programs, other state programs, to create a state household population file that includes an estimate of household income. And then from that, we developed an estimate. It is speculative because we don't really have good information on the number of dependents for this population, but that's how we got to the 84% and 87% for you all there. Some things to preview around what's coming next. So we're going to continue to explore these opportunities to center family experiences and outreach. We're developing a not too late to claim campaign. Let me say that again. Not too late to claim campaign to let people know that they can go back up to 3.5 years to claim credits. That is actually going to end in 2 days. That campaign. So we're excited to learn a lot of lessons on how we did that, but really focused on kind of framing this as an opportunity for folks that, did you know that you could do that if you had any unclaimed child tax credits or other credits? And then we are also looking to move beyond outreach and really diving into understanding barriers that might be preventing uptake as well. And we're working with the University of Notre Dame Wilson Sheehan Lab for Economic Opportunity to understand the impact for children too, and what is this doing in terms of childhood poverty. Here are the lists, as I mentioned, of all the links to the resources that I mentioned, from our promo materials to our free text sites to the video on how to use the SNAP Estimator tool. And I will end on the slide here on my contact information. If you would like to email me for any additional conversation, happy to have that conversation with you all. I'll stop sharing my screen. Happy to go back to any slides as they're relevant to questions that come up. And thanks for the time.
Thank you so much, Adele. We'll open it to the floor for questions, but just really quickly, who's winning the volunteer recruitment competition? You guys or the other agencies?
We launched it formally yesterday.
Oh,
okay. I'm competitive.
Copy. Okay. Questions? Anyone? Kristen, our tax department representative.
Hi. Thank you. I really enjoyed this presentation. I have a couple questions for you. Is the claiming of the child tax credit, is that, do you host that as a standalone form, or do you have to file it as part of a tax return?
It's part of the income tax return. Yep.
Okay. Do you host a Minnesota-only filing system? Like, could somebody go into your web and file a tax return?
Like a direct file type service or something along those lines.
Yeah.
We don't have.
Okay.
We do have an e-services platform where folks can access any letters that we've sent to them and summaries of previous income tax returns, but no way to file directly with us.
Okay. And did you say that if people get the advanced payment, it impacts their SNAP benefits, but if they claim it in full on their tax return, it does not?
Correct.
Now, is
yes,
that...
I did not say that explicitly, but that is correct. Yes.
Okay. Now, is that because of the federal tax code or the Minnesota tax code?
It was a determination by the Department of Agriculture, U.S. Department of Agriculture.
Okay, that's what
they
I thought.
determined that the advance payments would count as income against the SNAP benefits. Yeah.
Interesting. Thank you.
I just had a
Yeah.
follow-up to that. I was just curious, what are you hearing as some of the factors in a family deciding to take the advance payments, knowing that it could reduce the SNAP benefits?
So the information that we are gathering right now is anything around why people opt out. So at any point during that process, someone opted in before the first payment or before their last payment, they can go on to their e-services portal or give us a call and say, I changed my mind, I want to opt out. And so we do collect information on the opt-out to understand why folks may be opting out. For that, most people are clicking other. So we need to try to figure out what other actually means. Very few have indicated SNAP impacts as being the reason as to why they were opting out. So, Yeah. But as to the motivation as to why someone is opting in, we haven't collected that information quite yet.
And what kind of, like, participation in the opt-in are you guys seeing?
We are around, I believe, let me pull it up. Let's see here. In terms of, just waiting for this dashboard to load for me. About 17,000 folks have elected to receive advanced payments. That's about 8% of all people that received the child tax credit.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. And in terms of just some more insight into the advanced payments, the 3 payments that we send out are sent in August, October, and December.
Yeah, I had a couple questions as well. This is Grace. Thanks for the presentation. It's great. I was just wondering, just building on the last presenter, how much coordination are you doing with the Department of Social Services and with community partners to get the word out? And what kind of investment does that take?
A significant amount. Most of it is staff resources and time, making connections. There, as far as I know, I'm not sure, for example, for the Department of Children, Youth, and Families that created the SNAP estimator tool, what that cost was for them to develop that tool. One of the things that we wanted to make sure through our promotional toolkit was to try to have this be as low cost an endeavor for other partners as possible. So just taking our approved newsletter language and putting it into their own GovDelivery newsletter services. GovDelivery is the service we use. Sorry, the newsletter services that they use to send that message out. We do have that grant funding that we do provide to community organizations. So that looks to the tune of, just to share this figure with you all, we had 1.5 million for each fiscal year, 2026 and 2027, going to about 30 organizations for that effort. Some of the things that those organizations did ran the gamut from billboards and radio advertising to focus groups, listening sessions, direct mailers, things along those lines. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, sure.
With respect to the grant funding, did I hear that you're also funding to support sites that are providing volunteer tax assistance? Is that correct or no?
That is correct. And that grant is at 1.25 million for each fiscal year, 2026 and 2027.
Okay, thank you.
Let me just look through my last slide. Did I include our grant information? Yes. So that more details on our grant information. If you go to that last slide, it's one of the links that's available there as well.
Thank you.
Does that link list who some of those community partners are? That's what I was thinking I'd ask you.
I don't believe it is on the website, but what I do know about some of them are that a lot of them are community action organizations that are receiving the taxpayer assistance or the tax outreach grant program. And then there are a lot of organizations that kind of, work on this effort on financial literacy, tax preparedness. And so they're kind of nonprofit status. That is their whole mission and what the work that they do.
Thank you very much. I know we've had separate conversations in this room about the feasibility in the near term of advance payments, of monthly payments. So we have talked about that, so not to send us down this particular path too far, but I'm looking at your the SNAP calculator screenshot. At least in this scenario, the amount that the family would receive far exceeds or is more than double the amount of SNAP that they would lose. So I'm just curious from a learning perspective, if you have a sense of how that is the credit typically exceed the amount lost, right? Are the folks who opt to not receive, is there connection between like the proportion of those two amounts. Does that make sense?
We're researching that actively. So,
Great. Copy.
And just to be clear, though, it's the amount that you get in advance is greater than the loss in SNAP, but the total amount you get is the same regardless whether you get it in advance or at tax time, right? There's a value in like
Yes.
getting funding earlier, the kind of present value of money relative to deferring it, but the total amount would be the same either way. So really it is just a loss of that SNAP benefit in the end after the whole year is calculated, correct?
if you were just to look at the spreadsheet, but you also touched on some of the value judgments too,
Yeah,
right? Does
absolutely.
the money
Yeah.
flexibility now mean more to me than the loss in the benefits and all that? And so that's where, to go back to that family decision maker as an important value in this, as long as it's all from an informed place, right? We had some families that were worried that advance payments would impact their eligibility for student loans. And that's not factual. So we want to make sure we're addressing that, and that isn't a reason why someone's making a decision not to opt in and participate if they would have otherwise.
Just quickly. Yeah, thank you. And just real quick follow-up. Was the Department of Agriculture USDA decision based on the advance payment of the credit, or if a state were to structure it as a payment after like you get paid a portion at tax time and then two or three more payments over the course of the next year? Do you know if that would be treated the same way, or did they not kind of to slice it that thinly, I guess?
No.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think it's
what
the
went into
the
decision,
recurring.
but,
I don't
I
think
think
it's
it's
the
recurring,
advance,
right?
it's
Yeah,
the
that's what I
recurring
thought
monthly.
too. Yeah, just wanted to
Scott?
confirm.
Yes, I think that's the case, because I think we also oftentimes will have issues around SNAP when it comes to sort of like the programs that are happening with youth right now around like set income that is happening, right? Depending on how it's structured.
So you're saying if we paid partial with the return and then did subsequent payments, those are taxable? Or they do impact SNAP benefits?
I think
Yes.
it would, yes.
I think it's the recurring versus the non-recurring part.
Yeah, there has been an effort it's a federal law that could be clarified. It's been interpreted one way. It could be interpreted a different way in the future, but it could also take I think, an act of Congress to clarify it fully. But yeah, it's up in the air now, so it may bounce back and forth between administrations.
Anyone else? Questions for Adele? Tia, did you have one?
I do. I think it's a question for us as well as a question for you, Adele. When you think about the community partners you've pulled in for outreach grants, and you think about sort of the knowledge gaps and the reality, right? How have you strategically partnered with folks that maybe represent the concentrations of either uptake or loss, or sort of the folks that need it the most, so that you're getting the CBOs or the partners that are in those communities specifically?
I think for us, it's really going beyond our typical. We've put the grant on our website, and we anticipate that people know where that information is, and that the organizations are going to reach out. So it's been a really good partnership with a lot of agencies, and kind of my role within public engagement, right, is figuring out where are those kind of centers of influence within a community that we should be reaching out to and having conversations and making sure they're aware of the grant funding. So one example of this is, tribal member and urban indigenous member outreach is a big focal point for us. And we made it a priority to go in front of tribal leaders, to go and have conversations with urban indigenous organizations and say, did you know that this is available? Join us for our grant webinar, grant review kind of webinars, really ask us details around all this stuff. We notice you've partnered with other organizations to kind of provide free tax preparation services. Do you want to learn how to develop that as a service you would provide yourselves? And let's have a good conversation there. So I think it just requires intentionality by someone within or a group of folks within an agency to say, we need to go out there and have that direct conversation.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Really appreciate that presentation. Very informative, very inspiring. Thank you, Adele. And to see what's actually possible from folks who are doing it is great. So thanks again. And just to recap, before we jump into our discussion, we're a little over time, but that's a good thing because it's overtime because everyone's engaged. Some of the key points I hope we all take away from Adele's presentation, right? Similar to Devyani's, promotion should be informed by steps in the tax filing journey, awareness and decision-making, as well as the act of submitting the return. We should convey clear, consistent messaging across channels and repeat. And duplication is desired, as noted in both presentations. And easy-to-use tools should inform families, help them weigh their options, and walk them through the filing process, which should be made as easy as possible, especially for those with low incomes who likely, as we heard previously, are nervous about filing or haven't filed in a while, or both. And to the extent possible, we should work to mobilize trusted messengers such as local CBOs to echo that clear, consistent message so that families are hearing it from all sides. The 86% take-up rate among eligible Minnesotans, up from not having had a state-level credit prior to 2023, essentially functionally up from 0, is very impressive, and something that we in other states can strive for. So we really appreciate you joining us today. Thank you, Adele. Thank you to Minnesota. And we'll transition to our usual discussion period, which will be a little bit abridged, but I think based on the questions and the presentations, you all can see where we're headed.
So thank you again to our presenters, Devyani, Simone, and Adele. As we move into the discussion section of today's program, we'll talk about ideas that we could consider for increasing take-up of the child tax credit and things that we could potentially implement in New York. So after hearing both the research and the state government perspectives on promoting child tax credit uptake, what lessons can we learn from them? How can New York State nonprofits and advocacy groups lock arms and work together to build and carry out a successful promotional campaign for the CTC? Excited to hear y'all's thoughts. So, floor is open.
Do we know about what our estimated take-up rate is of the current child tax credit? I know you were going to ask. Okay, sorry, I was like, I don't want to put you on the spot, but you're the one who might know.
I am not a numbers person.
Yeah. And then I'm curious about other.
Estimates. All right, so.
Yeah.
Microphone.
Microphone.
This is actually coming from the governor's press release. So it's 1.6 million New York families benefiting 2.75 million children.
And
Did that answer your question? I'm sorry.
I guess what I'm kind of, and I know it's kind of hard to, it's an estimate, but of all the people who are eligible, how many claim it? What percent claim it? Like he was saying the take-up rate, meaning of all eligible, 86% actually claim.
Well, define eligible.
Well, that's
They
what
filed
I
a tax return or they didn't? Like,
Fair-
we don't
fair
have any,
question.
right, we don't have any way of
Yeah, I mean, you'd
estimating
have
the
to
people
look-
who didn't file.
You're eligible, and then how many actually take advantage of their eligibility? is
Yeah.
the question.
Yeah.
So it's a mix between filers who didn't claim the child tax credit, but income would suggest that they should, right? They have a dependent or whatever, but they didn't, for whatever reason, claim the credit. Plus those people who did not file, who we have some awareness of through census data or administrative data or whatever else, whose incomes don't exceed the phase-out point of these credits currently or under the new law. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of data out there that one could come up with that estimate. Maybe that's something someone could do because it would be helpful. Yeah.
Urban did an estimate. Yeah, Urban's.
So the modeling that Adele described is not, like, I don't think super easy to conduct. Urban did some of that, so looking at administrative data, looking at census data, looking at tax department data. I am not recalling the percentage that they estimated. But it essentially requires checking several different sources and taking a leap in terms of assumptions and simulations.
And then I'm also curious, do we know sort of what New York presently does with regard to doing outreach, like how, I don't know, I know there are VITA sites, I don't know how they're funded. Because it sounds like that's what we are interested in thinking about.
So we do have VITA sites, but we also have a taxpayer assistance program within the tax department where we host sites and tax department employees volunteer to provide assistance. We could probably do much more in that space, but it's, again, getting the locations and the staff to staff them. We, at the beginning of the year, are around peak various filing times, we remind people of their filing obligations, we remind them, that they have to file a return, but then as part of it, kind of remind them, you could be eligible for these certain credits. I did get sent to me a flyer, I guess we have on the earned income tax credit, but admittedly, we have nothing on the child tax credit, so I think our communications area is already working with that. What I found interesting when I went to Minnesota's, I went to this link, this promotional materials, like, they're excellent. I went to New Jersey, they have it. Like, I feel like there's a lot of states that have promotional materials out on their website, and we don't. So I do think that we definitely can improve in that area. It's easy for us to come up with a flyer and stuff like that, so.
Well, not only that, but it just seems like we're not using social media enough. I mean, at least during COVID, I can tell you in the healthcare environment, not everyone has a phone, but a lot of people have a phone, right? And even a vulnerable population, right, that we want to reach, that could be very difficult, especially in rural communities and other places where it's hard to get to a site, right? How can we make it easy for people to be able to use a phone, right? So can we do videos and/or, live presentations where people can get on and watch it and not have to go somewhere, right? Because I think,
Like webinars or something like
Yes.
that. Yeah, no, definitely.
but even use social media platforms differently. Like, I would love to understand more what their social media strategy was, because it feels like people spend a lot of time on social media. I don't, so I don't know enough about it to know whether it works or not, but it seems like a lot of people do find it valuable. So is there a way to leverage social media in a way that we haven't done before? Because now it's speed to execution, right? It's not something that can take years to develop and years to roll out. And how do we quickly reach a community that needs to be reached? I mean, the one takeaway in the first deck that we went through about improving the uptick was among the low-income households who have not filed taxes in 3 years, 84% of them didn't know the benefit existed. So it doesn't give you the total universe, but it's an indicator that there is a huge knowledge gap. So you have to assume that, I think, across the board.
So I think it's getting them that information at the point you're having that interaction, that one-on-one with them. So it's OTDA, it's the community partners, getting all of those tools to them and kind of guiding them of, tax season, this is where you need to go.
So to that point, I'm also wondering how we're using and leveraging our current contracts with providers to provide additional funding so they could have those conversations. We know that there are pantries who just give out food, and there are pantries who actually sit down with folks to see what their benefits are. Those are like ripe for those kinds of conversations.
So could I just jump in? I think there's sort of a short-term and long-term with some of this. Short-term, there's a tax filing season coming up in a few months that will take place before the next state budget is finalized. And so therefore, I think there's within the upcoming year, what are the opportunities to drive awareness around this expanded credit? Again, particularly for young children, so targeting the messaging around that. If you've given birth in the last year, if you have a young child, like, make sure you're filing. The governor can usually generate some cameras when she goes around the state, so maybe there's some events she could do at VITA programs, things like that, where she sort of helps build awareness through like earned media and then other targeted, or I'm sorry, not targeted, but broad, like let's get some materials out there, let's have some social media toolkits, things like that that can help partners kind of drive attention to this. And then I think sort of longer term, it's about identifying, whether it's through the upcoming state budget. This is these are relatively modest amounts of money we're talking about in the scheme of the state budget that could help folks become much more aware of these services, help services expand their operations. To Grace's point, like what existing contracts could be kind of modified to add certain services. What can local governments do to help support this? All those kinds of things. I think that's a longer term strategy, which we know the credit is partially going to affect this year, partially going to affect the following year, and then hopefully we'll see a much larger credit in future years. But building towards those kinds of things so that we have sort of a plan for rollout and continued growth of, obviously we want to calculate what the uptake is, but for higher uptake in future years as we get sort of smarter about what's needed to help support families in navigating the tax filing process.
And I would just, 'cause I'm going to run in 1 second. I think that local departments of social services are like a key outreach. Like I know we do, and like periodically as we run up, but like every Department of Social Services has specific contact information and can reach out to many of the people we're probably trying to reach, whether it's non-filers or filers, but they have no idea, but we know their income is probably lower. And so how that can get incorporated into that, which is relatively like low touch because we communicate with people all of the time, right, through a variety of different channels. So like being able to incorporate this or like make sure the messaging sticks across lots of different things we're talking to them about, even if it's not about that, right? It's like making sure like that there's buttons or something that say like, hey, here's a thing that you should be aware of. The other thing I would say for this year in particular, right, there's a lot of information that's going to get thrown at these populations. We really have to make sure that like our messaging is really integrated and simple, which I think there is a way to do it of like when we're talking about SNAP and ABOD, but also the child tax credit. So I think like that type of coordination at the state level will sort of help lead the localities in regards to how can we also sort of amplify that message so that folks don't get confused because we're going to be sending so much information their way that they got to do all these variety of things.
I mean, yeah, we definitely will partner with tax to put together materials that can be used and distributed broad-based. Certainly, we've done it in the past in terms of like texting. We have the ability to text households to remind them of certain things. We can certainly do that. Certainly, social media. I wonder if because there's so many new populations that will get a significant benefit now. Do we have like a pre-screener? Like this is what you may be eligible for? Because that could be enticing for households.
I think that's actually incredibly powerful. And it's the thing that I think is missing from our general conversation is the current context. We could almost be having this conversation 5 years ago and it would sound the same. So I think the current context is more of like, folks are losing benefits and they don't know. Right? We're all walking in the dark, and tomorrow, anything could sort of happen again. Everyone's counting every penny, every dollar, every dime. All of us are. And that is the reality of living in our state and living in our nation right now. And so here is an opportunity to put more money in your family's pocket, more money in your household that you might be missing out on. I think when we talk about taxes cleanly, like in a very clean, like tax-specific, tax code way, it can be isolating and alienating to certain populations who don't see institutions as helpful, particularly in this moment. But this is an opportunity for us to say, we're all feeling the crunch. We're all feeling the tight. Let's help those out who actually are eligible to get some help.
And in addition to folks not being confused, I think coordinated messaging will help people also understand that while the feds are cutting something they get, they can still rely on something from the state.
Sorry, just want to jump in, guys. For me, what I'm seeing in the community, you rely on your resource as someone you know. So 100% is going to go with someone who told you information. You can go to websites, you can go to Facebook, you can find information, but if you don't know someone that they like this presentation just said, if you don't know the word of mouth, I'm not gonna respect what you're saying. I had to see someone get a $200 check for me to honestly know that a lot of us was gonna be qualified. Some people that I'm dealing with, you a senior, you literally have a house phone. So all your information comes from either the news or if somebody come by and stop by to see you. Another way that people are losing shortage, we're losing trust in finding information, to trust the information that we see out there. So when you rely on your community, I'm a big, strong believer in believing in families, believing in the multi-families, believing in what they say is the power of the key for all of us. So if we keep that in the mindset, I love that he said he had over 30 organizations and how he partnered. When you think about kids, youth, homelessness, refugees, those are our communities that say they want us there. So to me, I love that he said that, they advocated, they fought, they went to local leaders. That's the same thing that we have to do at the same way when we say information. All of us have to speak the same tone. And it don't have to be a scripture. It has to be 4 sentences, 1 sentence, but we all have to speak the same tone. So that's what I really took from it. I did take that. I love that. Honestly, I feel like we can buy in the same way. A lot of our cities are rich. Organizations can share the information if they really want to, but I feel like right now, it's intentional. I don't even know what benefits is acceptable for a lot of people. So if we kind of know what's out there, what's available, what parents or people are non-citizens, immigrants, homeless, what qualifies for them, and speak that tone, I think that'd be better than knowing, you qualify or you applied because you think you qualify for taxes.
Thank you. I see Commissioner Harris-Madden. Do you have a hand raised?
Yeah, I just wanted to echo the sentiments of, I believe that was Candace that just spoke. Absolutely credible messengers are really going to be key here, and the repetitive message here is important as well. Sometimes we in government want to be very careful not to duplicate our efforts, but in this case, the more efforts, the better. And I'm just thinking about OCFS's network. For example, we have family policy advisors that have lived experience, their parents themselves, and we can leverage those individuals to speak with families and educate them on this. But also loved the ideas that Minnesota presented regarding going to, child care centers, for example, having banners up, having materials ready for parents that are coming in and out, maybe looking to leverage, again, volunteers. I don't know quite how that would work for us with the state, but leveraging individuals that could post in those specific places where we know parents frequent and provide them with this information. Even the private sector, might be worth exploring what local supermarkets will allow us to do, when there are certain benefits and drives. I see organizations all the time. I think this goes back to Grace's point too, leveraging our nonprofits, because you'll walk into a supermarket and you'll see that there's a drive for veterans or a drive for the Salvation Army. And I'm just wondering if on or around, tax season, we might leverage individuals to do the same.
Yeah, totally. I think that's right. Others?
Yeah, I just thought of something. Do we have the unintended positive consequence of, so we're talking about people uptick for the New York State child tax credit, but for people who maybe have income, but they're below the filing threshold, there's a likelihood that they also qualify for federal credits that they're unaware of. So this would be like an even bigger bonus. They're getting even more. Because they're not, are both the earned income tax credit and the child tax credit at the federal level have a income component?
They do.
Yes.
It's $2,500 for the federal child tax credit, and it starts growing after that.
So
And the
that's not a
EITC it starts at the first dollar. It's small. I mean, it has to scale up as a phase-in, but yeah, a lot of folks making $10,000 a year would receive, some significant credit from that they're not currently if they're not filing.
Thank you all for your
Could I ask
thought.
one quick question? Sorry.
Yeah.
I know government sometimes has to go slowly, and there's a reason for that. But it sounds like there's an opportunity, and maybe, I haven't looked, I didn't go follow the links in the Minnesota presentation, but it sounds like there's some good examples of stuff that could be prepared and then gotten out to localities and gotten out to other state agencies. And so timing-wise, like, to Pete's point, like, I think some of us on the outside will be advocating to get some money into the budget to really get more assistance out there. But do you think there's a shot at getting materials ready before the end of the year so that they can be distributed to people during the beginning of tax season?
Yes.
I think it's certainly the goal. I think in terms of like the concentric circles of what's doable at the core is sort of like the clear, consistent, simple messaging that everybody would use, not just tax, but OTDA and pushing out messaging to clients, or thank you, Scott, pushing out via Access HRA app to folks enrolled in benefits. Other agencies that are client-facing. So I think that's sort of like the most immediate thing that can be done in-house, if you will, but I also think there is the role for trusted messengers, perhaps some kind of partnering with community orgs to promote that same message, so they're hearing it from tax and OTDA and also from organizations in communities. I think, like, we saw the picture of Governor Walz standing at the tax prep site with sort of like a map of their sites, right? So I think that there's a number of ways that we can think about simplifying the information, making it easy for people to access, leading them to as simple a platform as possible in terms of filing. I don't know what tax systems would allow in terms of simplification, but I think simplification is the goal. So these are some of the things that I'm hearing from our conversation today. And acknowledging that it is 1:30 now, time flies when you're having fun. I'm going to just recap sort of what we have to do next. Taking some of these ideas that were floated here, I think both presenters also recited a list of moments. Adele, sort of like these life moments where they thought people would be susceptible to messaging. Devyani also cited some moments. So I think looking back at what they sort of found as useful, productive points in time to reach out to people. So we'll look at that for some guidance, and we'll go through the materials that they have developed. It could perhaps be lifted and shifted, as they say. So just to run from these ideas that we've come up with, thanks to these presentations, thanks to all of your comments, I'm just going to run through what we have to do next real quick. So just want to acknowledge when we last met, or the time before, we indicated that we were still preparing our public benefits survey report summarizing all of the results we got through 2024. You'll remember that last we presented to you, we presented the results of the Phase 1 report, which was that first wave of responses we got in the spring related to the formal public hearing that we held. Pleased to report that our 2024 public benefits survey report that digests and analyzes all of the responses we received is now on our website, includes quantitative and qualitative analyses. One of the reasons we found kindred spirit in Devyani and their team's presentation was because it similarly sort of did a data analysis, but also like in their own words, qualitative quotes analysis. So you can find that on our website. I think that the findings, if you go and look at it, you will find that the findings are consistent with what we presented previously. But please feel free to take a look, and that survey will remain open. So please continue. We know we asked you last year at this time to promote it. We're going to ask again if you could all promote it. to the extent available, acknowledging what Scott said about all the constant messaging to folks. We don't want people to be confused. But Scott and the New York City team and we at the state put the survey link, for example, on the Access HRA page and got some significant responses. So I feel like that is an example of what could be achieved if we put on that same page some of the tax credit information. So that's on the survey. We talked a bit at the beginning of the meeting about the end of the year and going into next year. So we have our ongoing work with Urban, which we are gearing back up to restart after they've done this enacted policy analysis. So we will do some continued measuring, comparing census data to our projections. We'll do some continued iteration and forward-looking modeling. In terms of the schedule for the rest of the year, as Kat mentioned, in order for us to issue a progress report, we need to convene in person. So that is our usual December meeting. It will be shorter than this meeting and our usual meetings. Like last year, I feel like it was half an hour, 45 minutes. So sorry in advance for making you all come here for that, but it's a good reason. And then late November, because we need some time to digest and write, we'll review a draft of our progress report. That meeting will be remote. You'll remember in the past 2 years, that's a moment for everybody to weigh in, but we don't all need to come up here. It's really soliciting feedback so that we can edit a version and come back to you with the final version in December. So that is a quick look at the rest of the month. And I think our progress report this year is really going to focus on recapping what happened with the enacted budget, recapping what Commissioner sort of went through on the federal context, how that changes our discussion and thinking, and also advancing some of these ideas. Just as last year, our recommendations report included a section about administrative burden and public benefits for consideration. We're thinking building on these presentations to include a section on tax credit and administrative burden for consideration as well. So that is a preview of what that report will include. And then, as mentioned, going into next year, we will try to get back into our sort of committee, statutory group iteration and building towards a potentially augmented forward-looking package in the future. So those are quick summary of our next steps. Any parting thoughts or questions? We appreciate you all coming and offering your thoughts and questions. Another great discussion. Our 15th great discussion.
Yeah, thank you all for your time and attention today. I know it was a lot of negative information, but we, are definitely blessed by having this group of individuals who are devoting your time and energy to helping to reduce child poverty in New York State. It remains obviously an incredibly important mission, and we look forward to working with you to advance additional recommendations and importantly also to implement what we do have available to help families throughout New York State. So thank you so much.
Thanks again all. See you soon.